Howdy y'all, my name is Annie Mae and welcome to Trinity's Crossroads, the intersection between chance, fate, and the road you take in life. Today, I have a question for you all. How many of you are fans of Sonic the Hedgehog? And how many of you are fans of Hazbin Hotel? The reason I ask is because I, personally, am a massive fan of both, and have been wondering for a while now, is there any overlap between the two fan bases? It definitely feels like there should be. The two franchises are so similar to each other in a lot of ways that it feels like they would attract the same fans. And while I could probably sit for hours listing off all sorts of different things that give me that feeling, one thing in particular is the characters. Specifically how they're designed. I don't know what it is, but the designs of both Sonic and Hazbin characters are extremely simple yet complex. And both franchises designed their characters in such a way that feels very open and welcoming almost to the idea of fans creating their own characters based off of these franchises. It's not uncommon at all to see Hazbin and Sonic OCs floating all across the internet. And with how those IPs design their characters, it's not hard at all to create a completely original and unique character for one of these IPs. Are they always good? No, but honestly, that's not what makes them fun. It's the fact that you could take any two objects, animals, plants, or whatever, and mash them together, and then boom, you've got a character for either Hazbin or Sonic. And it's this simplicity, this incredibly easy method of designing characters that got me wondering if the fans of these two franchises are the same. And so, to figure that out, I decided to do a little bit of an experiment. For today's video, I'm going to be creating a Sonic and Hazbin OC, a character that will feel very, very familiar to both fan bases. That way I can see if fans of both are actually one and the same, or if they're separated in some way. But how am I going to do that? How am I going to create a character that both fan bases find familiar? Because I don't know if you've noticed, but Sonic and Charlie don't really look anything alike. Between the art styles, the design philosophies, and a whole lot of other things that go into creating characters for both franchises, it should honestly be very difficult to create a character that resonates with both fan bases. However, there is one thing that the Sonic fan base absolutely adores about the Sonic franchise that I believe will make this a breeze. Something that will take this challenge from seemingly impossible to incredibly, ridiculously easy. And that thing is robot doppelgangers. While the concept in and of itself is not unique to Sonic, it's still a very common thing you see within the franchise. And the way that the franchise handles it is actually quite fun and interesting, and very unique to its style. So, I thought, why not take the robot doppelganger concept that Sonic tends to explore and apply it to Hazbin Hotel? Let's take a primary member of the Hazbin cast and give them a robot doppelganger designed in the style of one of the robots from Sonic the Hedgehog. Specifically, Metal Sonic and the other metals. Those robots are so iconic to the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise and fanbase that it's kind of a trend to take a character from that franchise and create a robot doppelganger in the same style as Metal Sonic for that character. And I thought taking that trend and applying it to Hazbin Hotel would just be an absolute blast. Something that would be really fun and unique and interesting, while also making sure that people are familiar with it. The Metal Sonic design philosophy is familiar enough to the Sonic fanbase that they'll instantly recognize it, while the more unique and specific elements of the robot will be familiar to the fanbase of Hazbin Hotel, since they'll be based off of one of the characters from that series. I'm honestly really excited about this. I thought this was a brilliant idea and one that would definitely help me figure out if the Sonic and the Hazbin fan bases are one and the same, or if they're two different sets of fans. So without further ado, let's get into that. And let's see which character I created a metal variant of and how I went about doing that. Oh, and if you guys are interested in doing this yourselves, please join in while listening in on this video, because spoiler alert, I had tons of fun with this one, and I think you guys will too. Alright, so I guess the first thing that I should discuss is which character I ended up going with for this challenge. There was obviously quite a few very, very good candidates for this. Husk would have made a very interesting looking design, Angel Dust would have been fun to explore in terms of power set, and Alistair's just a fan favorite character. Of course, I would consider him as being one of the most viable of characters to try to make into a robot. But if you look at the bottom left corner of the canvas, you can actually see that I already have the character sketched up and the design prepared in advance. And anybody who knows the cast of Hazbin Hotel very well at all will immediately recognize this character as Vaggie. Yeah, of all the characters I could have picked, I don't know why, but Vaggie was just the one that I wanted. She just felt like the coolest option present. Plus, she felt kind of logical as well. She'd be one of the characters to get involved the most in having to deal with Eggman, and Eggman really only designs robots based off of characters who are regular problems. So I figured Vaggie, being a character who is very upfront and gets all up into people's personal space, would very likely be a regular problem for Eggman. Additionally, like I said before, I thought it would just be cool to explore Vaggie's design over any others. I honestly don't know what it was about Vaggie's design that had my attention over the others. I just felt like, of all the characters, she would be one of the more fun ones to explore initially. So I just went with her. Now, in terms of the actual design elements, when I first went into this process, I had a few things that I knew about both Vaggie and the metals that I knew I needed to keep in mind when going into this. For the robots, it's a common thing for them to both have rockets and air intakes placed somewhere on their bodies. For Metal Sonic, both are in his torso, with the air intake being on the front and the rocket being on the back. For Metal Knuckles, the air intake is across his chest, while the rocket is his tail. For Metal Tails, it's both his tails have been replaced with twin jet turbines, so the air intake and the rocket is one and the same in that case. And for Metal Amy, the air intake is on her forehead where Amy's bangs usually are, and the rockets are placed within the skirt. Knowing that these elements are regularly found across all the different metal designs, I knew that I wanted to also include them in this design, especially since Vaggie is capable of flying, which is part of the reason all of these characters have these rockets built into them. Eggman regularly puts aerial superiority into his robot doppelgangers to make it so that the other characters aren't quite as capable of maneuvering around the world as his robots. So it was important that I introduced those elements into Metal Vaggie's design. And the way that I did that was by putting those elements into her hair. I basically knew straight away going into the design that if I didn't make the hair the rocket, then the hair was going to be a serious problem. If it wasn't there for any specific purpose, it would be pretty pointless to have. Eggman's really good at cutting out all of the fluff in a design and stripping it down to its most important and valuable elements. So I had to come up with a way of making the hair useful in the actual design while being able to leave it so that it actually looked like Vaggie. Now, fortunately for me, I had the idea almost right away to just make it the rocket. Just put a rocket on her back and boom, the hair is included in a way that is useful while still allowing for the design to look like the original character. Perfect. As for the air intake, I wasn't as sure what to do with it originally. I really didn't know where to put it because normally the vent sits somewhere that makes sense for it to sit on the original design. It essentially replaces a part of the original character's design so that it still feels in place while at the same time being... I've been messaged. Pizza! I'm gonna go grab that real quick. Be right back. Alright, I'm back. That was some good pizza. Now what was I talking about? Oh right, the air intake. It essentially sits somewhere that makes it look like it's a part of the original character's design while still having its own unique look to it. For example, Metal Sonic's air intake is a big yellow circle with a hole in the middle and sits on his belly, where in the original character design, Sonic has a basically bare patch of skin present. This makes it look like it's still Sonic's belly, while at the same time posing an actually useful element in the design for the robot. It's almost like it's camouflaging into the character's design as though it were a part of the original character's design, and I really loved that. And I had to figure out how I was going to implement that in this design as well. And it was a bit of a struggle at first, but then while I was working on the foundational sketches, trying to get some ideas of what I could do, I realized I had no idea what to do with Vaggy's bangs that hang over her left eye, which, if you don't know, is actually missing in the official show. I won't explain how in case you haven't watched it, but basically Vaggy lost her left eye, and in its place, she has her bangs hanging over her left side of her face, as well as an X marking the spot where her eye was. And when I realized I wasn't sure what to do with that part of the design, I realized I could actually take the air intake, which again, I didn't know what to do with, and put it on the bangs, basically making it a spot where there is a hole in her face, just like in the official design, and use that as the air intake. And then I took that X that is normally sitting on Vaggy's face in that spot, and I turned it into a couple of crossbars that sit on top of that hole, so that it had the X motif and still looked like it was a natural mechanical part of the design. Now there are other elements that are consistent across all the robot doppelgangers of the Sonic series, like how all of them seem to have armor on their lower arms and legs. And not only that, but the way they do it is unique to each one. Just one example of all the small details is that while both Metal Knuckles and Metal Sonic have little protrusions on their leg armor that helps to protect their knees, for Metal Sonic, those protrusions are flat across the top, while Metal Knuckles has sharp points on the tops. Other examples would be how the wrists and the ankles function on each robot. They're similar, but unique at the same time. There are all sorts of little details that consistently appear across all of the bots, but are portrayed differently from bot to bot. And seeing this, I knew that I had to try to implement those same details into this design and make them work somehow. So that was a heavy focus for me when designing Metal Vaggy. As for those knee guards, well, I decided to emulate two elements of two different designs to help make a more unique look on the robot. For the first element, I happened to notice that Metal Amy has these little cuffs that are wrapped around her ankles, which look like the socks and shoes that the real Amy wears. And for the second element, I noticed that Vaggy actually has some stockings and long sleeved gloves that she's wearing that go up past her knees and elbows and all the way to her upper arm and mid-thigh. Combining these two elements gave me the idea of extending the knee and elbow guards on Metal Vaggy's armor so that it wrapped around her upper arms and legs, helping to protect more of her body than what is protected on the other medals. It's a small thing, but it's just one of those details that helps to make the design look more unique and original while still feeling very familiar and consistent between the designs of both the medals and Vaggie. I could go on for much longer about all of the small details that help to make this design look unique and original and stand out on its own. But I want to move on from all of that and talk about another element that was really difficult to work with: the skirt. You see, thanks to how the skirt hangs in front of the legs, it made for a real problem in terms of mobility. Eggman prides himself on being able to create incredibly mobile robots, especially when they're designed specifically to outmatch and outpace other characters, beat them at their own game. And having a skirt sit in the way was definitely gonna pose a serious problem to the design. So I had to figure out how to include the skirt so that it still looked like Vaggie, while at the same time making it a useful and natural part of the design. But I didn't want to just do the same thing that Metal Amy did. Metal Amy has rockets built into her skirt, so that she has an easier time propelling herself vertically. And while, yeah, that would have been a very easy cop-out, for one thing, I already knew what I wanted to do with the rockets. I didn't want to add more. It felt wrong. I also didn't want to just do the same thing again. And Amy's skirt is wavy, so adding the rockets into the design made sense. It helps to emulate that wavy look. But Vaggie's skirt hangs down. Plus, she has wings. It would make no sense for her aerial mobility to come, at least in part, from her skirt. So I had to find another function that would make sense for the skirt to have while staying in line with Vaggie's design and character. And that's when I came up with the idea of segmenting the skirt into multiple armor plates. What if Metal Vaggie had various armor plates that hung down from her torso in front of her legs, thus helping to defend and protect her lower body from damage? It was perfect. And so that they didn't stay in the way whenever Metal Vaggie was moving, they would be on hinges so that they could lift and move, allowing Metal Vaggie to maneuver her legs around without getting stuck on the plates. And as I was starting to put all of these pieces together, it was starting to paint a picture of what this design, what this specific robot was specialized in. The combination of the skirt armor plate things with the larger armor pieces that covered the arms and legs, and even the addition of Vaggie's short sleeves being turned into pauldrons for Metal Vaggie's shoulders, which was another design choice that I made. All of these things combined were creating a very heavily armored character, which made sense for Vaggie. Vaggie is a warrior, a very capable warrior. She's very protective and defensive, and I mean, she even says it in one of her songs, "I will be your armor." It makes so much sense for Metal Vaggie to be heavily plated in armor and ready for combat. It honestly was just too perfect. I didn't even intend for it originally, but all of the elements just fit so well together that I can't deny it just works. And that actually helps with the whole improvement aspect of every Metal Doppelganger. Like I said earlier, Eggman has a habit of attempting to create a superior version of whichever character he's making a doppelganger for. But I'll be perfectly honest, aside from the fact that Metal Vaggie has rockets instead of angel's wings, which I cut from the design because they were so difficult to include naturally, I couldn't really come up with anything that made the design feel superior to Vaggie. But after coming up with all of these extra armor plating ideas, it really did feel like the spear wasn't actually the part that needed improvement on. Instead, it was Metal Vaggy's armor that helped to add the improvement. While Vaggy is a capable warrior, Metal Vaggy is a tank of a unit. She is a defensive machine, ready to take anything that anyone throws her way, including Vaggy, thanks to her angelic steel plating. Which, speaking of, let's talk about the colors for a minute. I decided to keep the colors basically consistent with Vaggy's design minus one tweak. Two, really. Firstly, I altered the colors just a tad to have a slightly more Sonic style of color palette. I know some of you might be a little upset about that, but from what I've studied about the robots, it seems pretty consistent that the colors of the original characters the robots are designed after are tweaked to just be a little different in some way, shape, or form. Not always, but at least on a few, the colors aren't quite the same. So I decided to use that to my advantage. Secondly, I took Vaggy's hair and lightened it up a bit so that it looked a little less gray and a little more silver. Because you see, in this hypothetical world where Eggman ends up reaching hell, he manages to somehow, maybe through the help of Carmilla Carmine, get his hands on angelic steel. And with it, he designs Metal Vaggy, putting angelic steel armor on her head, on the rockets, on her spears, and even making her shoes out of it. Heck, it might be her entire armor set is made out of angelic steel. He's just painted over it. I don't know. But I thought that would be a very fun and interesting idea to explore. If Metal Vaggy had angelic steel as a large portion or the majority of her armor, that would mean that she's incredibly defensive and resilient to anything that hell can throw at her, and that would make her especially defensive against Vaggy, who only has an angelic spear to fight with. So while Vaggy is having to play a very careful game, making sure that she doesn't get hit by Metal Vaggy's angelic spear hand blade things, Metal Vaggy doesn't really have to worry much about the fact that Vaggy is wielding an angelic spear because Metal has angelic armor to protect herself from that spear. It's one of those details that I don't know if a lot of people would have noticed if I didn't point it out, but I feel like it's really important to the design, and it really helps to paint a picture. Eggman creates robots to be superior to their real-world counterparts, and this angelic steel armor is how he did that with Vaggy. I don't think there's much else I really want to talk about. Most of the other things are tiny little details that don't matter too much. Things like how Metal Vaggy's eye is colored pink instead of red or green or orange like with the other metals. Or how I ended up keeping that little lower eyelash that Viv seems to include on a few of her designs. And the only reason I did that was because Metal Amy actually has her two eyelashes. So I thought, if it's okay on Metal Amy, then it must be okay on Metal Vaggy. It also just helps to keep the design looking that little bit more familiar. Other small details I included: the lighting on her eye is actually very new to me. This is the first time I've ever done anything like this, so let me know if that was really good. Let me know if you like the lighting in general, actually, and tell me what you think, if I did good or if I did bad, or at the very least, tell me where I could improve, even if I did good or bad. Her ankles are actually a unique design element that I came up with myself. None of the other metals seem to have ankles like this. Oh, and I guess one final detail that I am particularly proud of is that, if you notice, Metal Vaggy actually has 3 rockets that are protruding from her hair. The reason for this is because in Vaggy's actual design, she has 3 little triangle point things that hang down at the bottom of her hair, of her ponytail, and I thought I could turn those each into individual rockets, allowing for Metal Vaggie to have superior aerial movement by allowing her to activate 1 or 2 rockets, but not the other, in order to propel herself in a specific direction. That's actually a fairly unique element for the metals to have. Only one other metal doppelganger has any design element like that, and it's Metal Amy, who has 4 rockets, yes, but they're all attached to her skirt and are pointing downward. So they still propel her upward, but for Metal Vaggie, they kind of point down and back a little. I don't know if that really read well in the final render, but for what it's worth, I feel like the design did do a good job of helping Metal Vaggie feel just that little more maneuverable compared to both the other metals and Vaggie herself. And there you have it. That's Metal Vaggie. Honestly, this was a really fun one. I had an absolute blast designing this character. I know it's pretty simple on its surface. I just have to take Vaggie and turn her into a robot. But when it comes to designing a metal doppelganger, there really is a lot that goes into the process. You really have to take a lot of details into account. And I honestly found it to be an absolute blast to try to figure all of that out. So if you all are interested in seeing me do this again, please let me know in the comments, because I absolutely would love to do it more. Heck, I might do it just because I want to. I mean, a metal husk has been sitting in my mind for a while now, and I think that would be an absolute... I was about to say an absolute blast again, but I've said that so many times in this video, I feel like I should learn to say something else. But you know what? It expresses my enjoyment of the process so much that screw it. The idea of Metal Husk does seem like an absolute blast to me. Or Metal Angel. Metal Angel Dust would be so fun because those heterochromatic eyes? Does he have that? Because it's his sclera? How do you say that word? It's the white of his eyes. One of them's white and the other's black, which I guess means it's only the white of one eye and the black of another. But point is, his design is so unique compared to what you would see in Sonic that he would also make for an absolutely amazing challenge to transform into a metal doppelganger. So yeah, again, please let me know if you guys would love to see me do more of this, because honestly, I would love to do more of it. And while you're down there, why don't you hit the subscribe button and leave a like on the video? It'd help quite a lot. Oh, and by the way, I mentioned earlier in the video that I did a bunch of preliminary sketches before getting into the final render, which is what you guys saw. But you guys only got to see like 2 sketches, and only one of them was a preliminary sketch. The other was just me trying to figure out how to pose Metal Vaggie for the render. And the reason I bring up the sketches is because I'm curious. Would you guys like to see some of those sketches? See what it's like going earlier into the process? Because I did actually record that part of the process. I have the footage of my working on the sketches. So I'm curious, would you guys like to see that? The footage or the sketches themselves? And how would you like to see that? I know it's really early for me to be thinking about this, but I'm already planning ahead on what I could do with a potential Patreon. And I thought maybe taking those earlier phases in my work and putting them over there for you guys to check out would be a great way of doing that. Maybe making it a low tier to see the sketches, and then maybe like the next tier up gets you the footage of that process. If that's something you guys are actually interested in, please tell me, because I'm definitely considering making a Patreon in advance just so that it's there and ready. I don't have to worry about it in the future. And if you guys are interested in anything else that you might want that I can't think of, please tell me. I would love to know. And I guess that's all from me for now. So thank you all for watching. I hope y'all enjoyed. I hope y'all have a good life. And may luck and karma send fortune your way. Bye!